Okay, Madam Mayor, we are now at 4 o'clock and we're streaming on live on YouTube.
Okay, I think we're ready to start then. I'll call the meeting to order. And our first motion is moved by Tom Dewey and seconded by Brent Cameron, that the rules of procedure order be amended to move number 9, presentations delegations, up to follow number 5, the mayor's remarks, and that the agenda for the council meeting held February the 8th, 2022 be approved as presented. Are there any amendments, Kathy?
None.
Okay, so as amended. All those in favor?
Just as presented.
Okay, motion's carried. Okay. Is there any disclosure pecuniary interest in general nature thereof of any item on tonight's agenda by any member of council? Seeing no hands, we'll note that in the minutes. I have a motion moved by Bill McDonald and seconded by Nikki Gowdy that the minutes of the special council meeting held January the 18th, 2022, and the regular council meeting held January 25th, 2022 be approved as presented. Any questions or comments on the minutes? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Okay. Mayor's remarks, just a few brief remarks, and that is that our office is open and we are back in business. Still only seeing the public one at a time in our foyers, but things are slowly getting better. We're now having meetings with Dr. Oglaza every 2 weeks about the COVID protocols and what's happening. I got notice that churches in the Anglican diocese can start to open. I suspect United and the other churches will be following suit as well. Yes, so we're getting there.
Yes.
Still need to be careful, but yes, we're getting back to normal. I think that's all that I can think of. I did represent council last week on probably one of the hardest events I've had to attend to, and that was a message for Jocelyn Whalen, who's very, very ill. They had it in front of the pharmacy, and apparently it was on CTV News as well. Jocelyn is very, very sick with cancer and is palliative. So I expressed our thanks for her and Nick for being in our community and bringing the pharmacy here, and for all the work they did for us for over 30 years. So it was a tough one, but lots of people with lots of love. So it turned out to be a nice event. Deputy Mayor Sherry, do you have anything to add?
I do not at this time, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Okay. Does anyone else have anything to add at this point? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on then to our delegations. And our first delegation is Mark Prindle from McIntosh Perry Consulting Engineers. And Mark is here to talk about the Robinson Pit that is happening and to explain to council why we're not having public meetings about it. So Mark, if you could put your video on and do the presentation for us, please.
Yeah, sure. Thanks a lot. So Cindy, you're going to be helping me with this, correct? Or
yeah, I did enable you to be able to share the screen, I think. Okay. So if you want to run it, if not, I can pull it up on my screen.
No, I'll share my screen there. So it should be coming up as presentation now.
Yes, it is.
I have it.
Yeah, so thanks a lot, Council, for allowing me to present on behalf of Spencer Robinson of Robinson Excavating to talk about both the process that's undertaken under the Agri Resources Act, so I'll be using that term ARA, and the proposed Robinson Pit and Quarry. And so I got about 15 slides, hope to get through this in about 15 minutes. So I want to just go through the process. And I just want to make sure you understand that's not a full description of that ARA process. And it's the process is administered by the new sort of super ministry, MNDMNRF. And so only a brief summary of the process is provided, and I'll give a short description of the Robinson application, which I believe some of you have heard about in the last few weeks. And all the details can be found at these 3 different websites. So there's a very good one on aggregate resources, the regulation that it falls under, 244-97, and the Act itself. So Mr. Robinson's applying for a license, and the process for a license involves a few things. So one is pre-submission, and that's the applicant. So he retained Macintosh Perry to prepare technical reports, a summary statement, and drafts a site plan that shows you what the proposed pit and quarry should look like and how it will operate. And then you follow through with 4 steps after that. You submit that information to the ministry. And then you go through a notification and consultation period where, and I'll go through who was notified for this. And then there's a period of addressing comments. And then there's a decision process that comes, and that's administered again by the ministry, and if necessary, to a tribunal. And it's important to note that the process is very prescriptive, but it's primarily applicant driven with oversight by the ministry. So the applicant, Mr. Robinson, and our team work together to carry through the process. There's very strict dates and everything like that. And at the end, we have to prove that the whole process was followed properly as part of the decision process by the ministry. So step 1, submission. We submit the application package to the ministry, and they have 25 days to determine if the application is complete. And they can say, oh, it's incomplete, and return it to the applicant to make the necessary changes. And so that might be that you didn't include a particular report, or your summary statement isn't clear on the zoning of the property and things like that. But if it is complete, the ministry will issue a deemed complete notice, and then you move on to step 2, the notification and consultation. And so the things that have to happen, there has to be public notification, and the applicant completes the following. So that's written notice of application to every landowner within 120 meters of the proposed site. So that includes municipal bodies if there's a road nearby, any private landowners. Sometimes it goes out to things like Rogers, who might have a cell tower nearby and things like that. The sign has to be posted on the property, and has to be the notice of the application posted in a newspaper or online news source. And so those has to be done concurrently at the start of the process. Agencies are circulated, and there are standards on who is to be circulated. So that includes the Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks, Natural Resources, of course, themselves, conservation authorities, and so forth. Those people are all notified. And then the consultation period begins when these above noted things have been undertaken, and it lasts for a full 60 days. There has to be an information session, and it has to be hosted within the 60-day period, not too close to the beginning or too close to the end. And during this time, the applicant has to make all these documents which were provided to the ministry available for the public to review during the consultation period. I'll talk a little bit more about the difference now with COVID, how that occurred. And in all the notifications, everybody's told that if you want to comment or object, you have to make your notification in writing. That includes email during that 60-day consultation period, and it has to be sent to both the applicant, in this particular case, Mr. Robinson, and the ministry. And I'll talk about how that went with this application. So step 3, addressing comments, and that's actually where we're at with the applicant, with the Robinson process right now. So it's the applicant is obliged to try to address all comments, and if there's still outstanding comments, so if you receive an objection, there's a very particular form called the Rejection Form, which is sent back to each objector, and it can be sent back by different methods. Again, this day and age, email, but we have to get consent from the recipient that we can send back the comments to the objection. And if after we respond, the applicant responds to still an objection, there's another spot in the form which they can send back to the applicant. And that can go back and forth, but this has to be done. If the response to the objector is sent out and no response is heard within 20 days, the objection is considered withdrawn. So it's not considered any longer. And then if you can't get rid of objections during the 2-year process, the applicant must submit, and again, this is to the ministry, the summary of all the outstanding objections, prove that you had the newspaper posted, a list of the landowners that were notified and all the agencies that were circulated, and a summary of comments that were received, and then how we address them, and then any site plan, the application reports, etc., that are amended to meet the objections. So that we have to provide a very fulsome report on how we dealt with all the objections that were provided. And so the application timeline for dealing with those objections for a license such as Robinson's is 2 years, and that 2 years starts from day 1 of the notification and consultation period. So how does the decision process work? So the ministry will see that full package we prepared with the objections, how they were addressed, the revised site plans and comments. If there's no objections or that the ministry determines that they were adequately addressed, they'll make a recommendation to the minister of the ministry, and then the ministry can approve it. Or if they refuse to issue approval, you can request a hearing before the Ontario Land Tribunal. And if there's still objections, then that typically goes to the Ontario Land Tribunal, or the applicant can just give up, I guess, at that point. And the result from the OLT would be that the OLT may direct the minister to issue a license or refuse the license. So let's talk in particular now about the Robinson application. So Robinson Trucking Excavating is applying for a new license for a pit and quarry at the Climby pit. So that's actually a licensed pit right now, still licensed to extract sand and gravel for use in the local municipality. The proposal now is for a below water pit and quarry, and it's within the approved extraction area of the Climby pit. So right now it's just the loose overburden material that can be taken out, but the proposal is to remove all that, including what's below the water table, and then start quarrying. So that means blasting and crushing rock for aggregate. There's a location, I believe most of you know that, a few kilometers south of Sharbert Lake on Road 38. So the proposed licensed area, and that's the area that's under the control of the ministry, is 9.2 hectares, and the extraction area is 5.6 hectares within that. And that's similar to what the area is of the existing Climby pit. And the proposals again for both a pit and quarry, so taking the overburden material and the bedrock, and to extract the remaining sand and gravel overburden to blast and crush bedrock, and then again that's it's demand driven. It's to provide aggregate for laneways, roads, and other construction activities in the area. You can just think of the KNP that's been nicely redone. That's all crushed material from a quarry north of Sharbert Lake. The proposal is to extend quarrying to about 20 meters below the present ground surface, so about 65 feet. Like most applications, the proponent wants to sort of maximize the potential use of aggregate, and it doesn't always, quite often doesn't happen that they ever extract that amount. It's all based on demand. But the application is for 500,000 tons per year. And the final working will be a naturalized pond. You've probably seen pits and quarries around central Frontenac and everywhere in Ontario, in fact, that are ponds which are former aggregate properties. Here's just a zoomed in portion of the proposal. So that the solid rectangle is the licensed area. The dashed line is the extraction area. So this area has already been worked out, and most of the sand and gravel has been removed, but there's going to be access roads here. So this area will be what becomes a pond if this is approved. And so it's all within the existing Climby pit boundary. So what has been undertaken to date? So if you remember the process, the pre-submission tasks have been completed. Water reports, noise, blasting, natural environment, and archaeological reports, and a summary report and draft site plan have all been prepared. And we received the deemed complete notice at the end of September last year. And all the agencies were notified in November 2021 as required. and the list of agencies was noted in the deemed complete notice as to who was supposed to be notified. And the formal notification and consultation period started on November 22nd last year. So landowners within the 120 meters of the site got a notice. Many of these were personally delivered by the applicant. Others were sent by registered mail. The website was launched a few days in advance, and that had all the reports that I mentioned publicly available for download. And we did notice there was a moderate amount of traffic on the website. The sign was posted at the site. There was notice posted for 3 weeks in the Frontenac News. With COVID, the information session would in the past have been a public information center. We would have rented a hall in Sharbert Lake, for example, and shared the same information that was on the website. But it was, I made myself available for two days when people could call in and have a conversation with me, and I could provide further information and response in December. So that was within the more than 10 days after the start, before the end of the notification and consultation period. So we accepted objections, comments until January 22nd, so just a few weeks ago. We're also presently working with the Ministry on Indigenous consultation. So information on that has gone out to 7 First Nations. So the proposed pit and quarry would be like any other source of sand, gravel, and stone. It would operate on an on-demand basis only. There wouldn't be any hauling from that if people in the community weren't requiring aggregate for their foundations and laneways and docks and everything like that. It's important to note there's presently fairly limited aggregate resources in the Sharbert Lake area. If you do require aggregate within and south of Sharbert Lake, it would typically come from pits and quarries in the Maberly or Robertsville area, north of Sharbert Lake, to supply that demand south of the village. Right now, there's really no aggregate resources south of Sharbert Lake for about 45 minutes. That's a fairly long truck route. And it's felt that the continued operation of the Climby pit, including expansion to a quarry, will provide a source of good quality aggregate to meet the demands that will exist in the south portion of your municipality, and will be utilizing an existing resource without expanding the footprint or developing a whole new resource. It's important to note, I think, that with the present Climby pit, the things like natural environment and archaeology were much easier to undertake with something that's already disturbed, and it seems to be a wise use of resources. And it might sound counterintuitive, but if more aggregate resources are available, this results in overall decrease in truck traffic. There'll be a similar number of truckloads, but shorter trips. So if you can imagine, if you had in your municipality, you have 5 pits and quarries spread out over the property compared to 1 or 2 over the county, compared to 1 or 2, there will end up being less truck traffic and fewer trips through the village. And we feel that overall this proposal will result in shorter trips, better for both traffic and the environment in the area. So thank you. I hope that was informative. And Mayor, if I'm willing to take some questions if time allows.
Okay, thank you. Maybe if you could take your screen down, we can see all of council. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Bill, go ahead.
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor, to Mark. Mark, I assume that this is just a first step in making this an operational pit quarry, pit/quarry. If this is okayed, is there an additional reporting required in the way of, say, for example, a closure plan that if this inventory runs out, is there a requirement on the applicant to actually present a closure plan for this site at some point in the future?
Yeah, so that's a very good point, Bill. It is definitely a first step. So if the license is issued, you'll notice on the site plans, there's a large amount of work that has to be done, building sound berms and so forth. Need to have a system for treating and pumping groundwater, which will have to be done once you get below water. So there'll be likely 2 other approvals with the Ministry of the Environment for that. One is a permit to take water, and one is an environmental compliance approval for discharge of that water. And speaking with Mr. Robinson, even if the pit and quarry is approved, it'll be many years before he'd get to the point of actually having to pump water, because there are a fair number of big bedrock outcrops, which will be blasted and dealt with. And a big portion of the pit and quarry approval process is rehabilitation. So the 4th plan in the site plans is the rehab and what it's going to look like. So that is something that the proponent is bound to, and it shows how the site will look like when it's finished as a pond with naturalized shoreline, talks about plantings and so forth, and how it will look, what to do with berms that were there for noise, which are not needed anymore. So definitely a first step, and there are a lot of other requirements. So,
thank you.
Okay. Okay. Anyone else? At this point, this pit is already zoned as a pit and quarry with the municipality. Is that not right? Sonia, maybe you could weigh in on that.
For you, Madam Chair, that's correct. So we did take some time to review both the official plan designation and the zoning, and it has been in operation for some time, and it is currently reflected in an MX or in extractive industrial zone in the current zoning bylaw for the township.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments for Mark? Well, Mark, thank you very much for coming and explaining this to us. We weren't sure what we should be doing or how it all worked.
Yeah, so it's my pleasure. And again, the website is still operational if you want to look at any of those reports. And we are in the midst of dealing with objections, and we know for a fact there'll be quite big changes to the site plan, including even the hours of operation, which we're already likely going to be modifying and so forth. So we'll keep you posted, but thanks very much for having me. And I know Spencer appreciated very much for this opportunity as well.
Okay, great. Thank you. I have a motion, and the motion is moved by Sherry Wan and seconded by Victor Hayes, that council received the presentation from Mark Prindle, senior consultant with McIntosh Perry Consulting Engineers, regarding the aggregate resource process and the proposed Robinson Pit Quarry for information. All those in favor? Motion's carried.
Okay, thanks. And I'll leave you folks to it. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Okay, bye-bye.
And next we have Alan Jansen with us to talk about the Kingston Film Office.
Great. Thank you very much thank you very much for having me in. Well, this is more than anything, I just wanted to kind of share an update on what we've been up to, because we've the Kingston Film Office, we've been running the past 4 years. And it's been a really great growth sector. Most recently, the city of Kingston has named creative industries in big part film as priority sectors going forward. So as we're moving ahead, I just wanted to kind of give an update on what we've been up to, and also how we're trying to do more stuff to support the region, and then some of the exciting things that have been happening in Frontenac. So with that said, I'll jump in. I won't go through all the points. I'll just leave the slides up. But in 2021, so that was a record year from us. It's hard to track exactly everything that comes across, but right now we're at over 5 million in direct economic spend. So that's not applying a multiplier. That's just the receipts that we're seeing come across our desks and being spread within the community. We're seeing a big increase in major production. That's happened over the last few years. So a big part of when we first started was bringing on some of those anchor locations. So for us, about 50% of the production is at the Kingston Penitentiary. We get a ton within City Hall and Springer Market Square. And then of those notable productions in the last year, we actually had a couple at Fort Henry. And then now we're starting to see more interest within the surrounding regions, so supporting a lot into that side. There is a decrease in smaller local production, which has been completely to be expected. The costs in order to operate safely, the very necessary costs under COVID have definitely led to a small decrease. But what we've been able to do is get the local production companies servicing the big productions and coming in. So that kind of leads into a nice case study. So Mayor of Kingstown was our biggest production for the year. It's a feature, or sorry, a series all around the prison system in a kind of a depressed town outside of Detroit, written by Hugh Dillon, who's a Kingston native. In this one here, there's a lot of the stuff I wanted to kind of draw attention to, but it was about $2 million in hotel accommodations alone. But a lot of the stuff that doesn't necessarily get recognized, I wanted to kind of highlight. So we've been able to bridge 30 members of the community into local location support personnel, and then 150 or more background performers. So these are the types of roles we can get people in before they're union members, but we're now trying to work on getting more members of the community to be able to work in union. And then the really interesting things is things like, on the equipment rental side, washrooms, cleaners, painters. Herc was saying that this was one of their biggest customers for the year, equal size to any of their construction projects. Transportation, just a huge spillover. So a good way to look at the film industry is that it's like a manufacturing industry, except the end product is content. And also some of those benefits to locations as we're opening up. So there was about $100,000 in benefits to Kingston Penitentiary over the last 2 years with productions. And that's been everything from remediating some of the air quality issues to putting in new fence, fixing the old electronic gates, plus donations to the community. And it's all going to be leading back into more kind of tourism benefits. The other side we've had is we tended to have, smaller productions, about 15 local production companies, and then these big productions that come, shoot, leave. A big thing that we've been focusing on is building the infrastructure for productions that are actually based here year round, and not just involving people in kind of entry level roles, but shadowing and developing a skilled crew base. So we've been leveraging the Destination Fund, and we've been turning into these training opportunities. So we've actually had 8 short films at this point that are all like 3 to 4 day shorts where we get people shadowing in every department. And then there's also been a first test feature, and that was in the Frontenac region, which I'm going to bring up in a minute. But we've basically moved from what was info sessions and workshops with all the major unions to actually hands-on on-set training opportunities. And then the really interesting stuff that we're building on is being, a proposal to take this trial practicum program. So we went from info sessions to workshops to 20 students within the Queen's Film Program, and we're trying to expand that out to 100 members of the community, including area high schools, corrections offender release program, and then surrounding regions. And so we've got a proposal in for that. We also did a first phase of an RTO9 study, which was around how we can better support the surrounding regions when we get productions kind of coming into this way. Frontenac was a big piece of that. We've been supporting, and the region's been supporting a area producer, Jay Jolly, who's developing a hyper-local screen-based action plan to essentially build a business model for doing 10 features over the next 3 years within the area. He's a Wolf Island resident. And then all of this is feeding into a big federal or provincial proposal that we're putting together for a Southeastern Ontario Production Accelerator Fund. But that's kind of what I'll close off on. So for now, we're at 3 years of operation, which has allowed us to incorporate. And now that we're incorporated as a not-for-profit, we're starting to look for more funding opportunities provincially and federally on the heels of that growth. So on the Frontenac side, which was a big part of the RTO9 study, so the phase 1 study, what we did is we helped from Belleville to Cornwall within the regions, and special interest into neighboring Frontenac and bringing production into there and seeing how we can better support it. We shot more than 90 locations across the region. For context, the Provincial Locations Library, which is where industry goes to look for it, they shot 120 this past year. So almost 50% of all the locations are from our region. So we're making sure we're really strongly represented. We've been supporting with a lot of scouts. So Bonico Provincial Park, we're seeing a lot of stuff within the region in general. Also scouts in Napanee and whatnot. We started bringing on some of those locations that then went into the library and then helping support the actual production interests. So Hinchinbrook Public School, that was one that was shot knowing that the province is often looking for open schools, and we were able to land a production there. And then a test feature for us was the Verona feature film. So shot entirely in the Frontenac region. It was a $200,000 budget, so it'd be ultra low budget. And what we did onto there is we actually topped them up with an additional 10,000, helping them out with specifically financially on things like COVID safety and on making sure that there was a budget for locations. But then we worked as kind of a mentor on them. It was a first time writer, director, producer team, their first feature. So what we ended up helping with is mentorship to the production, but also helping within the community to kind of share our learnings on, how we turn permits to make sure productions are located, protected with things like insurance and proper payment and proper release forms. And then we also bridged to some of those training opportunities. So there was a series of Queen students and secondary students that were involved, about 40 members of the community involved in total. And then already we're now moving into 2022. We were starting to get a lot of interest in, it looks like the first one to land will be Salvage Kings doing an episode around Kingston and Frontenac. So we've been working on it, and then a big production from the creators of Amazing Race. So we're starting to see really interesting levels of production. I think in 2022, we're going to, on the film office side, we're going to try to leverage that nonprofit status to access more provincial and federal funding. And I think the big growth areas are going to be labor force development and then regional support and expansion. I think we'll continue to see record levels of major production, but we'll also start to see the small and local productions return as COVID becomes more affordable to operate under and safer to operate under. We've also expanded our team. So we've brought in a new part-time rep because we're both a film office, but also the designated rep for the Kingston Penitentiary. And then what we're now looking to leverage is trying to bring in those end-to-end productions that don't just come for key locations, but shoot completely within the area. So we already have 2 locked, done Mother Crimson, which is with the Wolf Island resident. And then we've got the first of his kind of model for doing 10 features. And then we have a romantic comedy called One Night that's going to be shooting entirely within the area. But what we're starting to target is more companies that actually would set up shop into the area. So companies like Vortex or Fireside Entertainment, they do 20 pictures a year, either like genre, horror, sci-fi, or like the Hallmark stuff, all in that $500,000 realm. And the nice thing with that is they're unionized on a talent side for in front of the camera, but behind the camera they're not unionized, which means that we can get members of the community meaningfully involved in so many areas. So that they'll be submitting a comprehensive plan for how we can get people involved, and that's going to be the big training piece as we build it out. The other exciting thing is I think going to be continuing to support more into the region. We're hopeful to get the approval for a second phase with the RTO9, which would be moving from beyond just inventorying locations to inventorying crew and local supports, everything from from background extras to a garbage collection, like really just building the whole gamut of suppliers, and then starting to actively promote that to industry. So right now we've been just reacting to the interest we're getting. We'll be looking at doing kind of a whole campaign onto it. And ideally this stuff feeds towards eventually the possibilities of studio space and so forth. But all of that kind of feeds in all these different initiatives like the RTO9 regional expansion study or the skills development fund proposal and the use of the destination fund for end-to-end production. All of these are initiatives that feed into this large proposal. And that's kind of the ending piece I wanted to kind of leave the group on. So we're actively lobbying for something called the Southeastern Ontario Production Accelerator Fund. And it's modeled after the Northern Ontario Heritage Fund. And so what they've done in Northern Ontario is now the 4th largest sector in Canada behind Toronto, Vancouver, and Montreal. And that's in large part because of the NOHFC. So they've created a $25 million stackable fund, which has turned to a $100 million industry. And so it's additional money that productions can get based on their spend within that region, on top of the traditional incentives and their traditional financing. So we've come up with an apples to apples kind of comparison. The region population wise is the same side, the 12 counties we're looking at. It's a smaller geographic footprint, but it's a very similar apples to apples comparison. And it's just basically the goal is to take a successful model from the north and apply it to Southeastern Ontario. And the case for it is that once you get east of Durham and west of Nepean, there's actually slower economic growth in Southeastern Ontario than in Northern Ontario. So we're trying to kind of take some of the momentum we've been building off of in the track record within Kingston and trying to see how we can apply that to the broader region and with a larger fund. So that right now has got support from 12 MPPs, and it's actually currently going in front of Minister of Economic Development and Minister of finance. And then the hope is that it could be potentially part of the coming budget. And so we're working with JB&A on trying to lobby that in with a whole working group that's all comprised within the region. So on that side, we've been getting and even from this region here, we've been getting support letters and pushing it through, and basically just kind of spreading the word on some of the efforts and on the sector. So I think that's most of the information, more than an update than an ask, really.
Thank you. Thank you. Very exciting news and information.
Thank you.
Maybe if we could take the sharing down. Does any member of council have a question or comment? Tom, please go ahead.
Thank you, Worship. Alex, I had a couple of questions. One, I was wondering, you mentioned Hugh Dillon. Was that the actor that was in the Flashpoint series that was aired for several years?
That's right. Yeah. So Hughes grew up in Kingston, and then he was a very successful musician with the Headstones, and then an actor as well. And this is a project he'd been wanting to do for I think more than 10 years. And so we'd been working with him on a while on trying to help land that in.
Oh, good. The other one I was going to ask you about that, that Northern Ontario fund was I know a lot of the Hallmark movies were shot up in North Bay. Is that where that funding came from to shoot those movies?
It's actually that funding is what's attracted a lot of those movies, for sure. Yeah, and actually, and that's the kind of stuff that we're actively trying to bring into here, because what's happened is most of the industry is out of Toronto. Toronto's become unaffordable. Then production companies were starting to move into Hamilton. That's becoming unaffordable as well. So the production's starting to spill out into broader regions. So I think the opportunity that we'd be looking to trap is similar to what Northern Ontario has done, but to try to capture a lot of those domestic productions that are $500,000 to 5 million, kind of into that realm, and then actually getting them to set up shop and anchor end to end. And those companies that are doing those Hallmark movies, they'll do 20 pictures a year, and so it actually ends up becoming a recurring crew that almost works in a 9 to 5 type level. They work on this film for 3 weeks, and they move to the next film and the next film. So we're trying to build a crew base that can completely service that.
Thank you. That's great. I'm glad to hear you guys are working in this area. That's wonderful.
Great. Thank you so much.
Good. Okay, Bill, you're next.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Alex, have you actually made your presentation to the East Ontario Wardens Caucus to try and ascertain some support from that group? You may be repeating yourself, because a lot of them are mayors of local municipalities also, but I might suggest that to get further support for this, because I'm certainly behind it. But just in jest, it would only be a natural for the Scarborough Lake area, because we do have a lot of Hollywood family here.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, that would be great. It's oddly enough, and kind of to that aside, so I used to work for years with a company called Mongrel Media, and my employer then, he's actually moved into the region since COVID, and the former head of the Canadian Film Center, Sheena McDonald, she's just recently moved into the area. So there's been a really interesting influx with COVID of people in industry moving here, and there's already been so much talent. I mean, we've got 20 minutes outside Kingston is the producer of HBO's Rome. Like, it's just an amazing number of people that we're trying to kind of engage into this.
Yep.
Excellent. Excellent. Brent?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Alex, great presentation. I do have a question. You were talking about local capacity building, and certainly you referenced Queens, because of course they have a film and drama department. I was wondering about, and this might be going a little out on a tangent, opportunities for co-op. They're, through the school boards. I'm thinking about young people that are maybe near the end of high school. They're taking drama. They may have an aspiration to get into the creative arts. And I'm just wondering if there's anything you can share about any possible partnering to allow young people co-op opportunities.
That's a great point. So what we were basically the skills development fund proposal that we're doing is to try to work within the existing frameworks of co-ops, and so we did that test out of Queens. But the idea right now is LCVI, Holy Cross, and Regi all have media concentrations within them that have a co-op placement, and then St. Lawrence College has various programs that have like co-op elements to them, like the hair and makeup school, for example. We're getting them involved in a production. So what we're doing right now, if it's successful, the Skills Development Fund proposal would be a one-year fund that would basically take the framework of the practicum that we've established with Queens and then expand it to 100 members of the community with kind of two main pools. One would be 80 people that would be kind of casual labor and entry-level labor, location support personnel, junior PAs, background performers, and then the other 20 would be to actually turn 20 members, residents of the surrounding region, into full Directors Guild of Canada union members for the SET-PA. So we're kind of building into it and then working within those existing co-ops. To your point about it'll make it a lot easier to work within the framework, but also then that way we're on the right side of labor laws and making sure that it's credited and it's insured process. And so right now I think the interest is going to be really good. Like the first test that we have in May, that feature so far, it's one night, it's a romantic comedy. We're gonna have a partnership with St. Lawrence College for their hair and makeup. So we're gonna have students every day working on it. 6 internships with the Queens Film and Media, and then we've also got a series of high school students from LCVI that are looking at coming out. So yeah, fingers crossed, it'll be a nice model. And then our hope is that by the fall, once we've got a first great safe test model, that we can formalize it and announce it to industry.
Excellent. Okay. Certainly sounds like you have the support of this council. And if there aren't any questions or comments, I have a motion. And the motion is moved by Philip Smith and seconded by Tom Dewey. The council received the presentation from Alex Jensen from the Kingston Film Office for information. And we hope someday that you'll be filming in Central Frontenac. I'm sure we can find you a couple of locations.
That would be amazing. Yeah, thanks so much for everyone's time. I really appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor of the motion? Motion's carried.
Okay. I'll talk to you guys soon.
Thank
Thanks
you.
again. Take care.
Okay, we have no deferred items. So we are at staff reports. And our first staff report is departmental updates, moved by Nikki Gowdy, seconded by Brent Cameron. That council received the construction details report January 2022 for information. Any discussion? Looks like we're on a good number of building permits already. Andy, any comments?
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor. I guess my only comment is I didn't have it in my report, the building stats by district. It looks like Hinchinbrook was the highest for 2021, very close to Kennebec, and in 2020 Kennebec was the highest and Hinchinbrook was right behind. That seems to be where the development's happening.
We sort of see that through Committee of the Adjustment too, with all the different severances. And Tom, you had your hand up.
I was just going to say to Andy that I think that's very helpful, having that information on that report going forward to see the breakdown by district. And I also think the general public like to see that too, what's happening in our area. So thank you for putting that together. I believe it was one of our Brent that asked for it. And thank you for doing that.
Okay, Bill?
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor, Andy, I think it is important to have this information because I've said a long time ago, it's good information to have as a council at times that you might be looking at improving roads or whatever. If the increased building is happening on a road that is going to increase the traffic in that area, then I think it's good to have that information at your fingertips to make proper decisions for infrastructure. Thank you for doing it.
You're welcome.
Okay. Okay. All those in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. Okay, next is amendment to a bylaw. This is moved by Bill McDonald and seconded by Victor Hayes. Whereas bylaw 2014-27 as amended included language that automatically adjusts the township building fees annually on February 1st based on the third quarter Statistics Canada non-residential building construction cost index, Ottawa. And whereas the building permits fees have not increased since 2014, and whereas the dramatic increase in the cost of construction materials and other inflationary pressures brought on by COVID-19, the third quarter non-residential building construction cost index, Ottawa, is much higher than in the past at 13.6%. And whereas the chief building official is recommending changes to the bylaw to ensure increases are more closely tied to service delivery costs moving forward by replacing the current third quarter non-residential building construction cost index, Ottawa, with the third quarter total CPI, which is 4.4% for 2021. Now, therefore, be it resolved that council approve the recommendation of the chief building official and endorse an update to building bylaw 2014-27 as amended to index the fees set out in Schedule C to the October CPI deviation annually. And further, that council directs staff to advertise the amendment to bylaw 2014-27 for the required 21 days and to schedule the required public meeting for changes to the building fees bylaw to coincide with the next available council meeting. So in other words, let's not do 13.6, let's do something more reasonable at 4.4. Discussion. Brent?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I commend you, Andy, for this. It's a more logical way of calculating this. Going by the old calculation, we were going to be we were going to go with the housing market, but those amounts are not reflective of an ability to pay. So, your house might accrue in value, and if you're trying to do some work, you're getting pegged not in terms of your ability to pay, but the inflated value of your home. And I suspect that based on your previous report, we're going to see price inflation on that front for some time to come. Our costs are more reflective of CPI in terms of the salary we're paying, the amount of money we pay for gas going here and there to get to these sites. So this, to my mind, is a more logical approach. And I think it's something that we definitely need to do, and I definitely support it.
Okay, Tom, and then Bill.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Andy, I was just curious to know, how does our fee per square foot compare to other municipalities in around the area, and also to the city of Kingston?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Dewey. I don't have the numbers for the city of Kingston, but I do have the neighboring municipalities here. Everybody calculates their fees a little differently. Ours are based on construction value. Other municipalities based it on square foot. Right. Some take into account the number of plumbing fixtures. It's really a mix of different calculations. So what I've done is I took a typical 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom bungalow with an unfinished basement, 1,500 square feet, with a value of $300,000. And to build that in Central Frontenac, with the current fees would be $4,226. With the proposed increase, it would go up by $300. South Frontenac, that same building would cost $6,485. And if our bylaw had been followed from 2014 as it was written, our fees would be equal to that. But I'm not sure if it was the turnover in this department or what, but the fees were never increased. There was something else I was going to add to that. And the way that bylaw is written, just so council's aware, that CPI index is written into the bylaw, so that would take effect year after year without having to go back to council to increase fees, just so that you're aware of that. The way it was written, they should have went up 13.6% this year, but obviously that's a huge increase. And our bylaw was written very similar to South Frontenac's. I don't want to take the credit for the suggestion. I just mirrored what they were suggesting to their council for this year. And I'm not sure if they voted on that yet or not, but.
Thanks, Andy.
Okay.
Bill, did you have your hand up?
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor, to Andy. A comment first. Also, South Frontenac has development fees also, which go on to the property owner before they begin building. So I don't think our increase in our building permits is going to have any negative impact on us in any way, shape, or form. But I have an operational question for you, Andy. Is that how long can a building permit be outstanding where you're before it has to be renewed? Because I can see you spending a lot of time in bookwork and trying to keep up with outstanding permits at the original cost of its years, and they paid $10 20 years ago. The cost of revisiting these sites must be prohibitive. Could you comment on that? Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councilor McDonald. Currently, there is no expiry date on a permit. Some municipalities do have an annual renewal fee. It creates a lot of administrative work, so an annual fee I wouldn't recommend. Another recommendation that I was thinking about putting into this report, but I just didn't have enough time to do the research on it. I would lean more towards a deposit, a refundable deposit. If you get your permit closed out, finalized within 3 years or 5 years time, then you get your deposit back. Where if it drags on any longer than that, then you lose your deposit. Is something that I think would be a better way to do it than a renewal fee every year.
Certainly something we can look at going forward. Okay, any other questions or comments on the motion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. Okay. We're still on development services, and motion moved by Brent Cameron, seconded by Philip Smith. Whereas South Frontenac Township's business case for taking on Part 8 septic systems was based largely on the permit volumes, cost, and fee structures that were in place with KFL&A Public Health in 2019. And whereas the permit volumes and resulting fees from the delivery of Part 8 services for 2021 has far exceeded the initial estimates. However, due to the pandemic and related pressures, these volumes may not represent the new norm. And whereas the Manager of Development Services / CBO is recommending to Council that the Part 8 fees be held at their current 2021 rate until at least February 1st, 2023, to provide more time to assess the cost of delivering the service to avoid unjustifiable increases being imposed on applicants. Now, therefore, be it resolved that Council approve the recommendation of the Manager of Development Services CBO and hold the fees for Part 8 services as set out in Schedule C of Bylaw 2021-09 at the 2021 rates until February 1, 2023. Discussion. Makes sense again.
Yep. Yep.
Okay, all those in favor? Motion's carried. People will have a hard enough time recovering from COVID, so if we can help them out in these types of situations, why not? All right. That is it for Andy.
Thanks, Council.
We'll move on to public works. Thank you, Andy. Okay. Public Works Activity Report, and Tyson is with us. There he is. I have a motion moved by Nikki Gowdy and seconded by Sherry Wan that council receive the Public Works Activity Report as prepared by the Public Works Manager dated February the 8th, 2022 for information. Any discussion on the motion? Bill and then Nikki.
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor, to Tyson. Tyson, I've had the opportunity this past weekend to travel the Arden Road from Highway 7 down through to Tamworth, but also across the mountain road back into Central Frontenac, the Echo Road, the Remo Road. And I've been up north in the north end of our municipality also. And I want to commend you on the condition of all of the roads that I happen to travel on, given even the fact that we're close to spring conditions and the amount of snow that we've had to deal with lately. I think the plowing of the snowbanks back off the main road is a stroke of really good practice, because it will let the roads dry up quicker. But I just wanted to comment, make my comment known that I was very pleased with the condition of all of those roads that I traveled on, and I suspect the rest of them are about the same. But I just wanted to ask you, parts of the Arden Road south of Arden there, would you be having plans to put some guide rails along some of those really steep banks that have been shown up after the plowing the snowbanks back? Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor McDonald, if there's damaged guardrails, they will be replaced as soon as the spring thaws out. But our current replacement program for guide rails, we try to keep it inside of capital projects. As we reconstruct a road, we're trying to do the guide rails as we go, so we're not spreading ourselves thin all throughout the township reactively. We're just trying to, as we improve the asset, we're trying to link the guide rails in with that asset.
Okay, Nikki and then Tom.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Tyson, I had a request about sandbox at the Wagner Road Garage. Is this something we can take a look at? This was seasonal residents in the Sherbrooke Lake area that come in over the winter and felt that going south to Godfrey was too much of a drive. So their suggestion was, could one be located at the Wagner Road Garage?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'll take Nikki Gowdy's proposal to our 2022 budget discussions. I know I've only been here for a couple of years, but I know it has been kind of an unwritten rule that locals stop by the dome in Sherbrooke Lake and help themselves to a pail of salt and sand. But it's not very formalized, and I agree that it could be.
Thank you.
Okay, Tom, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to inform Councillor McDonald that there are no guardrails on the Arden roads in Central Frontenac. They're in Stone Mills, because prior to Tyson coming on board, when they were rehabilitating the Arden Road, we did talk about guardrails in certain areas, but that never happened. So there are no guardrails unless Tyson's got them hidden under the snow.
Well, through you, Madam Mayor, up until the tree, that road, they actually use the trees, I believe, as the guide rails. So
well,
removed.
Well, that's what.
All right, let's move on. Okay, Brent.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Tyson, again, I know your crews are working very hard, and we're all very appreciative of that. I wanted to ask where we're at in terms of our salt and sand supply, because you guys have been very busy and you've had to do a lot of snow removal. So I'm just wondering if you want to speak to where we're at in terms of our supply at this point.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Cameron. At this point in the winter, our supply is looking good for to be able to make it through the entire season. We do have in our contract, like normal, an option to purchase winter sand at a higher rate, obviously, but we're gonna, like other years, we're gonna wait until the bitter end to hope that we don't have to pay that higher rate, and it's looking like we're in good shape right now as it stands.
Good. Okay. Philip, go ahead.
Madam Mayor. Tyson, a couple questions, maybe just for my help. When do we do the snow removal on the sidewalks in the hamlets? I know we've had a couple of big snowfalls, but it seemed to be quite a while after the village of Sharper Lake was cleaned out before the other hamlets were cleaned up. I'm just curious what the normal practice would be on a normal snowfall. And another request that I've had from a resident was around speed limits, and I don't know the process. So they're inquiring about the speed limit on the Long Lake Road and whether 80 was appropriate or not. So I don't know how we determine what the actual speed limits are on the roads, but maybe you could enlighten us a little bit on that as well.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Smith. Minimum maintenance standards allow us a little bit more of a grace period to get sidewalks cleared off after the initial significant weather event. So we typically are able to get at it within 24 hours after the end of the winter event. And we've been trying our best to reach that. We have had some COVID scares internally with staff that caused us to, the one time we didn't get at it for, I think it was right around the 24-hour mark, but we've been able to achieve that for most of the winter. Snow removal in the Charlotte Lake is on an as-needed basis, as you know. We haven't had to do as much ever since we bought the sidewalk blower. We've been able to kind of keep up with it. Now, the other hamlets seem to be in more demand because we haven't had the need to ship that sidewalk blower to the other hamlets at this point. And now that the other hamlets are starting to get caught up with snow removal, we'll be removing it from Charlotte Lake Village in the next week or so, we hope. As for your second question, I'm going to get you to ask me that one more time.
Sure. It's around the speed limit. So Long Lake Road is 80 kilometers an hour. And the question I had from a resident was, well, the statement actually was it was felt to be high. So I don't know how we determine what the speed limits, like how we determine what is a safe speed limit. I'm sure there's guidelines you go by. I just thought it'd be nice to know how you determine that.
There is provincial guidelines, and the difficulty is on a brand new road, a lot of it's based off design speed. And on a brand new road, it's easy. You've got the right vertical and horizontal curves to be able to classify your design speed of the road. Our roads, it's difficult to find that data without us having expensive studies. It's something I've considered looking into in our next road needs study, is getting that design speed recorded properly again. But typically it's based off of our best estimate, and any difficult ones we try to run through our CPAC committee when we meet with emergency services. The majority of the roads similar to Long Lake were dropped to 60. This one in particular was kept up. Long Lake was kept up to 80 as per the request of the fire department. And it's in relation to their response times. And I know that Fire Chief McDonough was speaking, we were speaking about this morning, and if he would like to expand on that, he's welcome to, but As far as I know, that the fire department requested to keep that as 80 because of volunteer response times.
Thank you. I might email you, Tyson, just with more information about that request.
Absolutely.
Okay. Okay, so if there aren't any other questions or comments, all those in favor of the motion to receive the report? Motion's carried. Okay. Is that it? Public Works? No, there's more. There's a couple more. Okay, next we have Community Development. Moved by Victor Hayes, seconded by Bill McDonald, that council receive the Community Development Report as prepared by the Community Development Coordinator dated February the 8th, 2022 for information. And Adriana is with us if there's any questions or comments on her report. You did such a good job, Adriana, that there are no questions or comments.
Oh.
Okay, all those in favor? Motion's carried. Okay. Next, we have docks. Moved by Sherry Wine, seconded by Nikki Gowdy. Whereas the Crow Lake and Charlotte Lake docks launch facilities are leased from the Department of Fisheries and Oceans, and that these facilities are in need of significant repairs to ensure the safety and integrity of the infrastructure. And whereas the DFO has indicated it may be interested in divesting these assets to the municipality, and in anticipation of this has committed to some funding in order to upgrade the safety of the ministry-owned docks at Crow Lake and Charlotte Lake. And whereas tender PW 2022-01 was released on January the 18th, 2022, and closed on February 3rd, 2022, to procure a contractor to complete the project. And whereas the bids have been evaluated according to the criteria outlined in the tender, and will be recommending the candidate for the selection of the successful contractor at the meeting. And whereas Public Works Manager has reviewed the bids with representatives from the Department of Fisheries and Oceans and obtained their approval to award the tender. Now, therefore, be it resolved that Council award Gemmell Sand and Gravel as the successful bidder in the amount of $47,199.80 before HST. And further, that the Public Works Manager be authorized to issue a purchase order for the work. Discussion. And they, in fact, are paying half of this cost, I believe.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Tom, go ahead.
So just a quick question, Tyson, with regards to the work being done there. I mean, I fully support this, but it mentioned in your report that some of the work, even though the ministry has given you a time limit there when you have to have it done by, some of this will be done in the summer. Is that the cement work, or because you can't do it now in the cold weather, or what work will be done? And I assume that they have agreed with that.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Dewey, the DFO has agreed to pulling that one item out of the contract to do it in the summer, and it's not concrete work. I don't want to get too specific with what it is, so I don't reveal contractors' unit prices, but it's timber work.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Tyson.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor? Motion's carried. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Council.
Thank you, Tyson. Have a good night. Okay, next we have a motion moved by Tom Dewey and seconded by Philip Smith. The council received this report for information. Oh, sorry. This is the update on communal servicing feasibility study. And Kathy, maybe we could have you speak to this.
And actually, Sonia's here to answer any of the questions for council. with the report. Thanks to Sonia, because we're working with the the planning department, and she offered to do the update for me, so I got it together and put it in for a report for council. So I'll let Sonia take it from there.
All right, thanks, Kathy. Good evening, everybody. We just wanted to have an opportunity to highlight for members of council that we are proceeding with, it's going to be a virtual open house for the communal services feasibility study for the Charlotte Lake former school site. It's happening on February 17th at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It is going to be live streamed on YouTube, as well as allowing people to register. And we will be recording it as well. So if people aren't able to make it for the actual event itself, we've created a project page on Engage Frontenac. And so after the event, we'll be posting the recording of the open house there for people to watch at their leisure, as well as we're hoping to be able to put up some of the images that we're going to be seeing once the consulting team kind of reveals what some of their preliminary ideas are for the site. So I'm certainly happy to take sort of any broad general questions. I'm not an engineer, so I won't be able to answer the really technical questions. You'll have to save those and come to the event on the 17th. But certainly happy to answer sort of any general process questions or just questions leading up to the 17th, and just general engagement questions if council members have any of those.
Okay. Any questions or comments? Everyone read the report that was in our package? Okay. I guess we're going to wait for the public meeting and go through it at that point.
No spoilers in advance. That's great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sonia. Obviously, you had written the report very well.
Yes, she did.
Okay. So, motion by Tom Dewey and Philip Smith that council receive this report for information. All those in favor? Carried.
Thanks,
Thank
Sonia.
you. Okay. We have a motion dealing with road allowance license agreements. Moved by Philip Smith, seconded by Victor Hayes. Whereas issues have arisen with respect to a license agreement entered into with the owners of part of Lot 5, Concession 11, Olden, being Part 2, 13R 10-278, which license agreement was to permit access to and certain improvements on the unopened road allowance between Concession 10 and 11 Olden. And whereas staff have met with the licensee and adjoining property owners on site to understand the impact of the issues, that council directs staff to terminate the license agreement with Kordakoff regarding the unopened road allowance between Concession 10 and 11 Olden. And further, that council authorize staff to consult legal counsel to review the options for alternative solutions outlined in this report and bring a final recommendation back to council for consideration. Discussion. So we have a road allowance that a person wanted to upgrade to access their waterfront property. And it's not working out. There've been issues with doing things that weren't permitted to be done. So the motion is to terminate that license agreement and to speak to council about what else could be done. Philip?
Just wondering if the license holder received notice that this was coming to council tonight to be revoked.
Cindy.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Smith. Yes, he was emailed a copy of the report. He did respond back and said that if there are any questions for him, that we're certainly able to reach out to him, but he wasn't going to be able to attend the meeting, but he is aware.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions or comments? If not, all those in favor of the motion? Motion's carried.
Madam Mayor, Bill here.
Yes.
During this meeting, our hydro has gone off 4 times and I keep losing my internet and getting frozen out. We're getting near the end of the meeting. if you lose me, if I don't come back, it's because we can't get the internet back.
Okay. All right. You're just on the wrong side of town tonight. My hydro's perfectly fine. Normally it's me out of hydro.
Yours comes from Perth. Ours has come from Kingston. I think it's, I think of the people down. So Brent Cameron's probably cutting me off.
Okay, let's move on. Maybe we can get the meeting done more quickly. I have a motion moved by Bill McDonald and seconded by Brent Cameron. Whereas the Ministry of the Solicitor General is seeking public input on a proposed regulation under the Fire Protection and Prevention Act 1997, FPPA, that would establish mandatory minimum certification standards for specific fire protection services. And whereas the proposed approach is based on the key competencies and job performance requirements of the National Fire Protection Association standards. And whereas more information will be coming forth to understand the implications this may have on our fire service budget. Now, therefore, be it resolved that Council accept this report from the Manager of Emergency Services / Fire Chief and CAO Clerk, and further that staff will bring back a report once more details are released. Discussion, hopefully we'll know what's happening before budget time. Nikki?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, to the Chief. I went on and read the consultation and actually put in comments in regards to small rural townships and kind of a financial hardship. But I just wanted some clarity because I wasn't sure. You had before instructed us that people couldn't be grandfathered in, but the consultation says that we can grandfather in our firefighters, and that we have 4 years to do this. So it won't be something that we really have to be hit with during the first year or so. We have 4 years to certify our uncertified firefighters. And some of the components also we have till 2028 to certify them. Did I understand that correctly, sir, or am I misunderstanding?
For you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Gowdy, there's a piece in there called legacy. So to go back to the grandfathering, IFSAC is the controller of the grandfathering. They gave us one opportunity back about 8 years ago. Then they gave us a second opportunity. Then they cut off the grandfathering. So the Fire Marshal's Office is saying, if you can give proof of the job performance and the accreditations that the firefighter has completed, that they will look at that and make a decision on that. But there is no grandfathering now. So it's a totally different thing. So we are in a position that we only have about 6 people or to 8 people grandfathered under the old system with IFSAC. So we would have to reevaluate our training programs. And speaking to the Deputy Chief, I think that will be a challenge for us.
Okay, but the timelines are good. So 4 years and 6 years.
4 years is for the firefighter 1 and 2 and the NFPA 472. And then the 6 years is for the special ops. So ice water rescue, auto extrication, things like that, and a high angle rescue. If those services are provided, council approves that, then that's something that we will do in addition to that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Excuse me, Madam Mayor. I just received a message from Sharon McDonald. Their hydro went out completely. So Bill will not be on, so you know.
Okay. Well, he heard this motion that his name is on. Maybe I better change it. Should I change it? What do you think?
He was on,
Yeah,
I think,
I will.
but you might be best to.
Yes. Okay, we're going to have Victor Hayes move this one. Okay, any other questions? Certainly, Chris will be bringing more information and a report to budget time. Oh, Philip, sorry, you have a question? Go ahead.
Sorry, it talked about public input. Were we considering on behalf of the municipality offering any input, or do we have an opportunity to provide input? Councillor Gowdy had commented that this stance on rural municipalities and the overcosted burden of certification perhaps might be important to address at a municipal level.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Smith. Certainly there can be some information passed along to me. We are having a PAC meeting on the 10th of this month. The consultation closes at the end of this month. The province is not giving us a lot of time. So there are also, AMO is having a meeting, I believe on the 14th. They're discussing it at that level as well to have input on this. So either to Kathy or myself is fine.
Right.
That way.
Okay. All right. This is something that's been coming, but we kind of hoped maybe they changed their mind on it. Okay, all those in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. I now have a cat on my paperwork. All right. Still with Fire and Emergency Services, moved by Nikki Gowdy and seconded by Brent Cameron. That council received this report for information which outlines the documents completed and approved by council for Central Frontenac Fire and Rescue as prepared by the CAO. And this was a follow-up to our last meeting discussion. Kathy, do you want to speak to this?
Sure, and let the council. And I spoke with Councillor Cameron to see what all he had in his, about the 204-page document that he referenced to. And once we started talking about it, I have the same information he has, which is the phase 1, phase 2 simplified risk assessment, and also the draft gap analysis, but it was not a fire master plan. So I think that just wanted to certainly let council know of the reports, and about Lumax, or Terry Gervais has been helping right along since 2016 with the chief and the former chief as well, putting all these documents together. So it will provide a basis for Lumax to be able to do our, our community risk assessment plus the fire master plan. So they are good documents, so that will help with the basis of going forward. So I just wanted to bring those to council. When the questions were asked of that last meeting, that's what made me think to go back and see what I could find as well. So I did locate all those documents. We have them all. So now we're just going to be able to certainly move forward. And I think with Lumax, because they have been working on all these documents right along, that's why we received the price we did to be able to complete those documents. Because if it would have been another, or if we, like we talked about, going out through the RFP process, it would have cost us quite a considerable more money. So I think that's why we got a fairly good rate on it, because he had already prepared some of the documents. So it's just information for council.
Well, and I think too, when you look at the number of years and motions that you went back through, it certainly jogged my memory. I'm sure that none of us remember those details all those years, but it was good to see it all laid out and what we've done and when we. Okay, any other questions or comments on that report? Brent?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I want to thank Kathy for taking the time to talk with me. I do want to clarify in my initial comments about that draft that I had, I was never under the impression nor wanted to make the suggestion that that was a fire master plan. Certainly, we haven't approved one. That report, to my knowledge, and I think it's been confirmed by this, that we were working toward that, and there was a lot of information, a lot of heavy lifting, a lot of research, and a lot of money spent at that point in time. So my concern then, and it has been addressed, that we're not starting from square one, that all of that work is not going to waste. Certainly, again, I knew that we didn't have a fire master plan, or we wouldn't be talking about this. My concern was that we weren't going to be starting from way back, that we could take this, use a lot of this information that would help not only turn this around with a lower cost, but also turn it around a lot quicker. So I'm very pleased that that's the take. And I'm certainly happy that Kathy and I had an opportunity to talk about that.
Good, good. Okay, excellent. All right. All those in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. All right. Okay, we are at committee reports. Moved by Victor Hayes, seconded by Tom Dewey. That council received the draft minutes from the December 8th meeting of the Economic Development Committee for information. Any discussion? All those in favor? Carried. Let's see. Okay. Moved by Nikki and seconded by Sherry that the following correspondence received for February 8th, 2022 be received for information, and it's number 1 to 6 in our package. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, now I have a motion to move into closed. There's no public meeting.
No.
There's no bylaws or agreements.
None.
Any notice of motion?
No.
Any giving of notice of motion?
No, Madam Mayor.
Any new or other business?
None.
Okay. All right, so the motion is moved by Tom Dewey and seconded by Philip Smith that council move into closed session pursuant to section 239(2) of the Municipal Act to discuss 1, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board, Titchburn Rink, section 239(2)(c). 2, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board, KMP Trail/Oso Road, section 239(2)(c). And 3, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employee, 239(2)(a). All those in favor? Okay, motion's carried. Okay,
So-
Cindy.
Yeah, we will now end this portion of the meeting, and I'll open up the closed session meeting. And once we come back out, I'll resume the live stream to YouTube.
Okay.